All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Brennan. I'm one of the co-founders of Wholesale, and today I'm doing this Feature Friday webinar to talk to you about how Wholesale connects to the marketplaces that you sell your inventory on, and how it specifically can connect to Swappa, Backmarket, and eBay, and other marketplaces simultaneously to keep your inventory synced across those channels. If you have any questions as I'm going through things, use the chat in this webinar platform to ask any questions, and I'll kind of call out the questions as I see them and get back to them. So, with that, let's get started. For anyone that has not heard of Wholesale before or is totally new to the platform, Wholesale is a serialized inventory management system designed specifically for folks that buy and sell used mobile devices and really specifically used cell phones. So if you're buying and selling used cell phones, tablets, wearable devices, Wholesale is the inventory system that was truly built specifically for you to keep track of all of your serialized inventory and now to sync it with your e-commerce channels. And so, the unique things that unique problems that wholesalers that are buying and selling used devices encounter where they can't track their IMEIs quite right, or they can't track the history of the devices when they're unlocking them or upgrading them or repairing damaged conditions, stuff like that. Those are the kinds of things that wholesale tracks and does a specifically good job of compared to other inventory systems. So that's what wholesale is. Today, in particular, we're talking about wholesale's kind of new direction and newest feature sets that I think a lot of people are excited about and are starting to use, which are our e-commerce integrations. And so wholesale can manage your inventory, the same inventory across your listings on various e-commerce channels simultaneously. And this is, kind of shooting for the main problem that e-commerce sellers have, which is they want to sell more. So if you've got a bunch of devices, a bunch of inventory, and you're wanting to sell it across various channels, I'm going to be talking about that exactly today. So how you can keep your wholesale inventory listed and synchronized across various different channels with the e-commerce integrations that wholesale has. And if you're familiar with wholesale, you know we have direct integrations with Swappa and Swappa's enterprise program, with Backmarket, with eBay, and with Sellbrite. So between these four different integrations, you can actually keep your inventory synchronized across a handful of different channels, not just the ones that you see here. So Sellbrite connects to other channels, and you can use it to keep your inventory listed on Amazon, WooCommerce, Shopify, etc. And you will see more direct integrations from us as time goes on. We're chomping at the bit and building those fast. So you'll be hearing about those soon. But I want to talk about basically how these integrations work and field any questions that you guys have. So moving right along, the very, very basic idea of how wholesale syncs with these channels is there are three components. So wholesale is syncing the listing quantities of your inventory. So your listings on, say, Backmarket, for example, it's keeping those listings updated with the current quantity of inventory that you have. And that's really important because if you sell on some other marketplace, then you want to update Backmarket so you don't oversell there. So wholesale is constantly talking to your channels to keep your listing quantities updated. And the second piece is orders. So when you're selling on any of your channels, the orders are going to come into wholesale so you can fulfill them with your serialized inventory. And then once you've fulfilled them and created either a shipping label or used or just like manually entered a shipping tracking number, you want wholesale to synchronize that shipment information back to the channel so it can update your customers with that information. And for some channels, will even as you commit specific serialized IMEIs to the order to fulfill the items that were sold on the order, wholesale will sync the IMEI back to the channel as well. And I think you'll see more and more kind of cell phone specific channels like Swappa and Backmarket requiring this over time. And it's another reason that using wholesale is a great fit for your workflow because it can actually sync those IMEIs back because it knows what they are. So it can sync those up to the channel for you and ultimately save time in the process. So I'm going to break these three down a little bit more specifically to talk about how each one of them works in wholesale synchronization. And so the first one is that listing quantity sync. So say you connect your Backmarket account to wholesale. It's very quick and simple. You just put in your credentials for your Backmarket account in the integration settings page in wholesale. But the first thing that you're going to do is set it up so that your listing quantities in Backmarket synchronize with the inventory that you have in wholesale. And the way this works is you import all of your listings. It's a one-click import to import all of your current live listings on back market into wholesale, and you connect them to your SKUs. So you've got a whole product catalog filled with different products that have different grades, conditions, and the variations of different products. And in wholesale, you can assign SKUs to those all those product variations, and then you connect those SKUs to the listings that you have coming in from back market. And that's how wholesale is able to calculate how many available items you have at any one moment. Is it uses the SKUs to calculate how many of those are available in your wholesale account, and then it tells back market, okay, for this listing, you've mapped this listing to these SKUs or to one SKU, and this is how many of those SKUs are available in your wholesale account at this very moment. And so wholesale will talk to back market every few minutes and update it with the current quantities of the various SKUs that you've connected to all of your different listings. So as you can tell, there are multiple levels here of the things that you need to connect, but this is how you got to connect things to keep everything updated and synced. And so there's a lot of connecting that goes on, but then once you've got things connected, you can add more inventory to wholesale or sell inventory of that SKU or those SKUs to all kinds of different places, and wholesale will keep back market updated with the correct quantity because it's calculating that every few minutes for you. And if you've sold on e-commerce a lot before, you know that doing this manually is an incredible chore. You have to constantly update your channels or have somebody on your team constantly updating your channels with the available quantities. So wholesale doing that for you every few minutes ensures that you don't oversell the inventory, and it makes sure that you've got the correct inventory available to sell on the channel. So hopefully someone will come and buy it on that channel. And so you're enabling yourself to sell more by spreading your inventory out over these channels, but also making sure you don't oversell, and that you don't have to have somebody manually updating every channel every few minutes. So that's the listing quantity sync. The second piece, and probably the most simple, is the order sync. So when you've got new orders that come in from all of your channels, but here we've got back market as an example, you can bring them in, automatically. So when those orders happen on the channels, they will come into wholesale automatically. And there are a bunch of settings that you can configure in wholesale for how you want those orders to come in. Wholesale has a lot of tools like order statuses that allow you to kind of map out your pipeline of how orders flow through your business. And so you can choose all those settings and utilize them to map back market statuses to your order statuses in wholesale. And when an order comes in, it can come in exactly right for your team to be able to go in and fulfill it. And so that's the order sync. It's very straightforward. Automatically, when you get new orders on your channels, they'll come into wholesale for fulfillment. And that, again, similar sync, it happens every few minutes. So it's bringing all the new orders in all the time. And then this last piece that I think is, often not talked about, but is really helpful in terms of the overall workflow of things, is the shipment and IMEI sync back to the channels. So you've got the listing quantities going up, then you've got orders coming down, and then lastly, when you create shipments for these orders that you have coming in, you can either add that shipment tracking information manually in wholesale, or you can use ShipStation to create those shipping labels. In either case, that tracking number will be in wholesale for that order, and wholesale will send that tracking number back up to the channel, so that the channel can notify the customer that the order's been shipped. And then for marketplaces that support it, and currently we just do this with back market, but I think you'll see this from more channels as time goes on. Wholesale will also send the IMEIs that you commit to an order. So when you are going in, you receive your orders from your e-commerce channels. They come into wholesale, and your picking team goes into the warehouse to pick the specific items that fulfill the SKUs on those orders. When they actually commit the specific inventory by IMEI to the order, wholesale can send that IMEI back to the channel if it requires it. And this satisfies a channel requirement, which, as anybody selling on e-commerce knows, these requirements can get cumbersome, and you want to have a clean workflow if you're fulfilling hundreds and hundreds of e-commerce orders. So wholesale will do that for you, and all you have to do is commit the items to the order in wholesale. It'll send the IMEI up to the channel, and you'll have the IMEI on the channel. So now if you're committing inventory to your back market orders, you'll see that IMEI on the channel itself on back market, tied to that order. And so it takes another piece of the copy and paste puzzle out of your hands and out of your team's hands, and does it automatically. So that's the last piece of that sync. with these e-commerce channels. And I think, what the next piece I'm going to do is show you guys a demo of what this looks like inside of Wholesale in terms of how you connect a listing to from an e-commerce channel to your products in Wholesale. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about how these steps, if you can imagine, you set them up between all of your different channels. And once you have them configured, so you have your listings imported for Swappa, Backmarket, eBay, and potentially Sellbrite connecting to many other channels. Once you've got those imported and you've got the SKUs connected and your catalog is set up with all of your SKUs, then you can kind of just go about your daily activity of buying inventory, adding it to Wholesale. And when it gets added to Wholesale, as long as you have listings for that inventory on your various channels, those listing quantities will get increased as you add more inventory. And then as you sell inventory, even if you say, for example, want to sell it wholesale. So say you've got all these channels running, then you also have your own wholesale store and you want to be selling, sometimes you want to sell 50 items at a time if you have the opportunity to. All you have to do is create an order for those 50 items, and they're gonna that those 50 items, the quantity is gonna get pulled off of your listings across all these different channels. And so in that regard, Wholesale is really an incredibly capable tool for keeping all of the inventory quantities synced to make sure you don't oversell and overcommit yourself to the number of inventory items you have for a particular product or SKU. So that is how you use Wholesale as the centerpiece for these connections between all of your different marketplaces. And I kind of wanted to say, did anybody have any questions before I jump into a more thorough demo of the way that these listings are connected inside of Wholesale? So anyone that hasn't seen that can get a chance to see it. No questions yet. And for anybody that doesn't know, feel free to use the chat for any questions you have as I go through. So, talking about how Wholesale connects to all these different channels, let's go to the demo. You've got this URL here and our email. Feel free to start a new trial, and we'll give you a little bit of an extended trial if you haven't had one before, just because you're joining us on this webinar today. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at any time. This comes to all of us at Wholesale, and we love helping with those questions. So at that, I'm going to pop over to this other tab that I've already got set up. And this is showing my back market integration in our test account at Wholesale. And so what you can see from this page is that I've got a few linked listings, and actually only one of them is connected right now. But I set up my back market credentials and set up all my settings for it, and then I went over to this tab called Listings, and you can see these different test listings that I've got in my test back market account. When we click on the title of this listing that's connected in particular, what you can see is a very clear and simple layout of how our inventory count is being calculated. And this is one of the things I wanted to get to in this webinar is describing that, to show you that the inventory count is looking at all the SKUs that I've connected. And currently I've only connected this one SKU that's iPhone 6 16 gig gold T-Mobile C grade. And right now, I don't have any stock level of that item in our inventory. And so it's obviously calculating 0 all the way across the board. But say I had 10 of these in my inventory. If I had 10, the inventory count for this particular listing would be 10. And if I had any other SKUs connected, you'd add those together to get to the current inventory count. And then we subtract the outstanding count. And the outstanding count is any new orders that have come in for that specific item or any items that match that SKU, so that we know those orders, they haven't been fulfilled yet, but they've come through from a channel and we have to fulfill them. So we've got to subtract that quantity. So say that quantity is 6. So we've got 10 inventory items of this, and then we're subtracting 6. So the correct stock level to sync over would be 4. So we would have 4 items to sync up to that channel for this specific listing. And this is how you go through and configure your listings for your channel. I can show you the settings page for this too. So we've chosen to match this particular back market listing to this SKU. But say I also had a B SKU here, I could copy and add the B SKU for this item and save it. And then I would have those two SKUs. So you can actually map as many SKUs as you want to a particular listing. So maybe you want to sell, and this kind of comes into play of maybe you have a damage condition in wholesale that describes a very slight screen blemish or a scratch or something like that, or like minor or heavy scratching, but you still are okay selling those on a particular listing. So you want to group different models together. Or maybe an even more common a common case would be you have a listing for AT&T devices on back market, but you want to be able to sell AT&T and unlocked, because if you send the person on an unlocked phone, they're going to be fine with that. You can now include the SKUs that represent both your AT&T and unlocked items to correctly fulfill that quantity. And then when you go and fulfill the order later, you're going to be able to commit either of those items to that order that comes in for the AT&T items, because you've put the SKUs here for both your AT&T and your unlocked items. So that's an example I think that people are familiar with a lot when they're selling devices online. So this is the settings page for a specific listing on back market. We'll pop back to the back market settings at large and go back to the listings. So when you connect your back market account to wholesale, you'll just put in your credentials. Then you'll be able to import these listings, and you can sync them manually and bring them into wholesale. And then you can connect them to all the SKUs that matter. They will come in with their own SKU from back market, so that'll come in by default. And if you already have your product catalog in wholesale synced with those SKUs that you've been using on back market, it'll just connect automatically, and you won't have to do any manual connection here. But if you need to, you'll be able to go through and you'll see visually whether or not these listings are connected. And if you enable the listing quantity sync in wholesale, wholesale will start connecting and syncing these quantities with your back market listings, and it will keep back market up to date. So you do this for each of the channels that you sell on. You create the listings on the channels, you import them to wholesale, you connect them to your wholesale product catalog, and then you just start adding inventory to wholesale. And as you manage your inventory with wholesale, it will keep all these channels updated automatically. So I know that's a lot of information. I hope I didn't bore anybody or put anybody to sleep. But if you've got any questions, feel free to use the chat right now for those. I'd be happy to answer questions about how this e-commerce sync works. And if we don't get any questions, thanks everybody for the time. I really appreciate it. I try to do these at least every week or a few weeks. So if you've got any questions, even ranging beyond the e-commerce connections, let me know. So we got a question that you guys could probably all see, but I'll read it out from Naftali. So I've tried using wholesale for a bit, and here's what I've been having issues with. eBay uses SKUs for inventory. Swappa uses specific IMEIs for every listing. So when I've sold something on eBay, it didn't take the listing off of Swappa. Has that been fixed? Yeah, Naftali, great question. And so to be clear, there are also two different Swappa integrations that we have. We have an integration with Swappa for power sellers, and that is more of a one-to-one where you're exporting inventory from wholesale to be listed on Swappa. And then Swappa also has an enterprise program for sellers that do a lot of volume, and you have to go through their approval process to be in that program, and it depends on how much volume you sell on their platform. So I'll let them kind of speak to how that works, but we can always send you the link to apply to that if you're interested. The main difference as it pertains to wholesale is when you've got the Swappa Enterprise program, it syncs very similar to how these listings sync with eBay and back market. So you connect the listings to your SKUs in wholesale in your product catalog, and it manages those things automatically. Whereas if you're a power seller on Swappa, I believe that we're removing that listing if you have sold a specific item, but it's not managed by SKUs, as you mentioned, Naftali. It's managed by the specific item, the specific ESN. So if you commit that ESN to another order, I'll need to get back to you on that. I'm not 100% positive that we pull that item and that listing off of Swappa, but I believe the last time we spoke with the Swappa team, they were working on a way for us to do that. So I will follow up with you in an email for an actual answer on that. Okay, and another question from Naftali. Until I commit inventory, it doesn't register on my SKU count, so I can sell out overnight because there is no auto commit. That's a great question, Naftali. So what I was describing earlier here with the outstanding count, this is how we handle these synchronizations. So you actually don't have to commit inventory items for them to show as outstanding. You do have to set up your SKUs. So if an order comes in for a SKU that is recognized in wholesale and that is tied to specific product variations, wholesale will consider that SKU. And when you've got an order for that item but you haven't committed it yet, it will be outstanding. So say in this case, I had 10 items of this iPhone 6 SKU that I've got connected. If I had an order come in for 4 of them, those would be outstanding now. So the outstanding, if as long as the SKU, again, as long as the SKU is recognized in wholesale and connected to items in your product catalog, then that outstanding quantity will now be 4, even before you do any commitment. So before you scan the specific inventory items, we will calculate that there is an outstanding quantity of 4 and subtract that from the total quantity. So that I'm not sure if there was confusion about how that worked before, but that is how it works. You do have to have your catalog connected though, because if that order comes in and wholesale doesn't know what product it pertains to, it's just going to have an unknown product and it's not going to be able to reduce the quantity here of your stock level. So you've got to have those connected, but once you do, it will be able to do that for you and it will consider those outstanding items on orders that aren't even committed yet. Hopefully that answers your question. Hmm. Naftali said it. If I'm not mistaken, it wasn't doing that for me with Swappa. I forget, Naftali, are you a Swappa enterprise seller or a power seller? Power seller. I'll definitely have to confirm whether or not that is how the behavior that we expect in the power seller integration. And again, I don't know how much volume you're selling. It might be worth checking out Swappa's enterprise seller program for things to work kind of similarly, so that you sync them between back market, eBay, and Swappa, and the integrations all behave the same way. But again, it'll depend on the volume that you're selling. I will follow up with you about both of those things, both of those behaviors for the power seller integration once I know for absolute sure. And thanks, Naftali. These are great questions. Good questions for me to be able to answer on our webinar and talk to everyone. And I think these speak to a really important part of the integration picture, that each channel is a little tiny bit different in the way that they integrate. And hopefully what you guys can see from wholesale and where we're headed in the future is we're trying to build the best platform to connect to these channels, specifically for folks that are buying and selling used devices. And I think we'll be solving these problems over time, but they're problems that exist no matter what platform you use. And our goal is to solve them best for this specific customer base, for folks that are buying and selling used devices. And so where you can use other inventory management platforms, I think that the IMEI specific features and stuff like this, exactly like this thing of the difference between the power seller program and the enterprise program, hopefully will be the ones that are solving that the best. So worth giving it a shot if you haven't. If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to put them in. Oh, thanks, Naftali. He said, but other than that, these things, wholesale's awesome, especially the phone check import. Really good. Thanks, Naftali. Yeah, that's the goal really for wholesale is to be a full management system for all of your device inventory, so you can bring it in using the tools that you use often to test your phones, get the inventory into wholesale that way, and then when you sell it, we have these integrations with the platforms that you sell your phones on. And so our goal is to make that a lot more succinct and a single platform to manage most of these things for you. So thanks so much. If anybody else has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them now. If not, I'm going to pop back over to my demo slide here just so you guys can see. Feel free to sign up again for a trial. We would be happy to give you a little extended time on that trial since you're on the demo with us today. And reach out to us beyond this webinar. Reach out to us at any point in time at that email address with any questions you have, and we'll be happy to help you with them. I think that's it for me today, guys. Thanks so much for the time, and I'll talk to you in the next one. See ya.